Dagda of August Falcha. Hi, hello, and welcome to another check-in video. Actually, this one's going to be a bit of a getting to know you video, and by getting to know you, I mean you getting to know me. I'm John O'Sullivan of the Irish Pagan School, and today I'd just like to take a bit of time to just let you know who I am, where I come from, and how that informs myself as a man in the world today, but also the path of spirituality that I have followed. So, if you're not interested in knowing me, you can leave. You don't have to watch the video. Like, we all have limited time here in the world, but like, if you're interested in getting to know, some of the stuff that kind of helped me move to the point where I recognized myself as pagan, and then got to the point where I realized we needed to do more for spirituality and the awareness of spirituality. Maybe this might give some insights. My partner Laura, who is the other founder of the Irish Pagan School, has mentioned that, John, you need to kind of let people know who you are. You can't just presume that people know who you are. And I realized I had been doing that. But in a way, maybe it's not all that bad. I've been kind of showing you along the thread of these videos who I am and how I kind of like present myself in the world. But I thought maybe it might be nice to kind of give you some of the origin story, the backstory. And so that's what we're going to do today. As ever, thank you very much for being in our community, for kind of checking in with us, putting the comments down below. I'm really very, very grateful for that. I have a particular form of humor or witticism, or my rants in a way get targeted in a particular kind of way because of how I choose to direct my energy and my words. If you've seen the video on being a bard, you know the importance of words. So I appreciate the comments, and I appreciate kind of the engagement that all of you have in the community, kind of sharing this and doing the likes, subscribes, and etc. So, who is John O'Sullivan? I suppose the first thing really is my first name isn't John. It's actually Jonathan. Well, actually, on the birth cert, if you were ever to see my birth certificate, it would say Jonathan Edward. So yes, I have a double barrel first name. I'm named Jonathan after my father, John, who was John O'Sullivan. And Edward was a name derived from one of my grandfathers. My middle name is then Thomas, which is my other grandfather. So they put Edward in between because he didn't want to be called a John Thomas, which is a different thing. But my connection with my name, Jonathan Edward, is interesting because for me, whenever I get called Jonathan Edward, I instinctively shudder because I know I'm in trouble. My full double-barreled name has been used. But as some of you may be aware, there's a pair of celebrity individuals, twins, one by the name of Jonathan and one by the name of Edward, who, in the last while have made a great show for themselves. They're very kind of entertaining and energetic as a pair of individuals go in Irish celebrity, and they go by the moniker Jedward. And so when people find out that I am in fact Jonathan and Edward, people try and go Jedward on me, and my response to that is no. I am nowhere near as entertainingly talented as those guys are. But I go by John. And because it's Jonathan John, I don't go Jon, John, I actually go Jon. So when I spell my name, it's Jon. And that's a bit of a weirdness about me. Also, I'm a Jonathan, so John Nathan, as opposed to Jonathan, as in the On at the end, which kind of grinds on me. I think that's a very anglicized version of it. But yeah, the Irish version actually that I was raised with was Sean Og, or Young John. So I am, the Young John, the version of my father, who is John O'Sullivan. So my mother is actually Carmel. And my dad served in the Irish Army for a number of years. He served in the UN peacekeeping forces in the Lebanon and Cyprus outside of Ireland. Served in McKee Barracks, setting up their aerials for radio communications because he was a communications officer. He also did service during the times of the Troubles on the border between Ireland, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. So there's a lot when it comes to that kind of circumstance. And oddly enough, my generation is the first batch of O'Sullivans in my direct bloodline who have not done military service. which may be kind of how we have shifted as a culture, or maybe how we as individuals have shifted. I had lots of opportunities to go into both the army band and the Garda band because I play saxophone. I actually play clarinet. I grew up in Finglas, which is a suburb of the North County Dublin, Dublin 11, and born in the 1980s. So it was a tough kind of recession period in Ireland at the time. And so my dad was discharged from the medical reasons from the army, which means there was a role reversal at home. My father became a stay-at-home dad, and my mom went out to work. She worked as a cleaner in Allard Irish banks for many, many years, very up early in the morning, out and gone before I'd arise to go to school. But my dad was the one who got us, myself and my four siblings, up, got us all ready, got us out to school, did the parent-teacher meetings and all that kind of stuff. I served on the parent council, actually, the parent-teacher council. And then later on, when I grew up, I wanted to be in the Cubs and the Scouts. And he actually joined with me, and he, became a leader in the unit and troop. But his communication skills from his army days, his intelligence, etc., saw him kind of elevate through, and he was kind of secretary to the Chief Scout of Ireland for a period of time. I love my dad. I'm very, very fortunate to have a very present father figure in my life. Because growing up in the 80s in North Dublin, a lot of people of my age didn't have a very healthy or even have a present father figure. So over the years, I've become able to look back and realize that I'm very, very fortunate having a stable home environment the way I did. But there was 5 of us, me and my 4 siblings, and 3 older and 1 younger. And so I kind of fell around that odd kind of not youngest, not oldest. But I was the first kind of male presenting individual during those times, but my youngest sibling is actually trans. So they have kind of come to that realization, which, I'm very delighted for them and very happy for them. And they've chosen the name Rowan. So love to you, Rowan. But yeah, I was always outnumbered. It was 4-1 in so many different ways, but we always had a very kind of focused household on communication. And all of the time with Jack and Karma, with my mom and dad, it was like, you need to talk. You need to talk it out. You need to kind of figure it out, talk it out. And they would leave us to kind of talk things out. Like we might get into an argument over like who's watching what and when, and that they would actually encourage us to negotiate it, to figure it out as to how we would get to a point of fairness. As I said, they both worked really, really hard, both in and outside of the home, for their community, for their people. And I worked as well, on the road to kind of tough financial times of the year. My parents, being very skilled individuals, would kind of pick up extra kind of jobs. So many times I wondered why I came home from school and there was a new couch in the front room or the sitting room, only to find that it wasn't a new couch. It was a couch to be reupholstered. And so we kind of did that as a family. I would be given a screwdriver and Jack would be like, okay, I need you to take out all those screws and take out all those staples, but don't tear the fabric because we need that to make the new pattern, to then cut the fabric, to then sew it, to then reupholster, because that was something that we did. My mother made dresses, like, amazingly talented kind of seamstress, made so many dresses, communion dresses for my siblings, even made wedding dress for my cousins and stuff over time, because they, she's so skilled, so talented. So that's the kind of culture I grew up in the home life. Outside of the home life, it wasn't so great. North County Dublin, the particular area I grew up in, was rather rough. And I've talked about this in particular times, about the toxic male programming. A lot of that came from growing up in the 80s in Dublin, where boys don't cry. It's put up and shut up. And where every year it was fight for your position and fight not to get bet up on. It's terrible. It's toxic. It's something I survived. But I'm very, very grateful because I survived it with a certain perspective, which I actually gained from a fun story. It was, well, I suppose, a sad story. Children have difficult times at different periods of their life. That's part of growing up. When external pressures like bullying become a factor, it can be very, very hurtful and harmful for a young individual trying to figure out their own identity. And I, very heavy set, curly haired guy, glasses, read a lot of books, Could play sport, but wasn't very sporty. And that was me. I was the quiet kid. I was the quiet nerd. I know. Here's me on YouTube talking about videos. Here's you going having gone through so many videos of me or classes or teaching. But at that time in my life, I was very quiet and I wouldn't speak. I was just reading. And there was one particular individual who was my routine bully. I managed to survive, managed to endure, and managed to stay out of the way whenever I could, because it wasn't a match. He was a very physical, dominant person. But I learned not to hate him. And I learned to pity him, actually. And that's what gave me one of the biggest kind of early wake-ups in my life around toxic patriarchy, toxic masculinity, because he was a very violent person and that was his outlet. Left to his own devices, like when he was playing sport or in the middle of a game, like he was so fast, so capable, so talented, so funny to be around. But put in a particular position where he had to establish dominance, or he was afraid, his instinct was to lash out. And I realized where that came from one day when I was walking home from school and I saw my bully and I was like, yeah, I'm going to like back up here because he hasn't seen me and I didn't want him to see me. And then we came around the corner, him a good while in front of me, and a bigger guy, a bigger kind of teen kid came out, just decked him, punched him straight down. And it was then I realized it was his brother. His older brother came out and without saying hello, without kind of anything, just punched out his little brother for no reason whatsoever that I could see. And that awareness then kind of opened my mind to the fact that, okay, well, he might be lashing out at me, but in this instance, he's the victim. And I then had to wonder who was bullying or harassing the older brother, that's the language that he actually had for communication or, expression of emotion. So I learned to pity him. And I still remember to this day that experience. And it has informed a lot of how I come to understand toxic masculinity and the fact that it's not just one individual, it's not just one person's anger, it's intergenerational trauma that's being passed along here, which is why I'm so overt about it, which is why I will try and talk about it as best I can, because it's so real and it's so hurtful. So I kind of grew up in this rough area of North Dublin for most of my life, the first 14 years, in fact. And then my parents, we got to a better, more stable place. Like as soon as my older siblings were old enough, as soon as myself could kind of get a part-time job, we all did. And we all contributed to the household. So they got to get to the point where we could move. And so we moved to a different area, Dublin 15, Clonsilla, Hartstown. And that was probably the saving of me, because my parents realized the neighborhood. Now, again, there's nice people everywhere. It's how you're raised, not where you're raised. It's not just one location that is a bad location. It's how you're raised. And so actually I was better for being too posh. I didn't speak like a North Dublin kind of rough hound. So therefore, obviously I was far too good for them, and how dare I, this idea of notions, and how dare I kind of not be in the same difficulty as everyone else. So we moved anyway. And in that instant, in that kind of movement, that kind of shift of location, I realized the next thing that helped inform who I am today, which was, I don't have to always be what I was. I can change. I can choose. I can choose who I am. And so when I moved into this new area with no one knowing me from the old area, and I went to the new school in that area, I made a conscious choice. I remember it very specifically because we went in to talk to the principal, and I was very quiet. I was very shy. I was like, okay, well, but then by the time it came around to the first day of school, I was still kind of quiet and unsettled. But when the first person kind of tried to establish pecking order over me, and ridicule me by my curly hair. In fact, he looked at my curly hair and he went like, oh, big noodle head on you. If that was the worst that I was going to experience in this new area, then it was nothing compared to what I'd gone through in Finglas, where I'd grown up. And so I realized I can be an entirely different person here. I don't have to be shy. I don't have to be quiet. I don't have to be, afraid, really. And I remember that day making this conscious decision in my mind not to be afraid anymore, that I could choose to be different. I could choose to grow. And so I did, I disempowered the bully, and I was like, yeah, you can call me Noodles if you want. I might not respond to it, but it doesn't hurt me. What about it? And so it allowed me to kind of shift, and allowed me to kind of grow to a different person. And that person was talking. That person kind of was interested in things, was interested in kind of sharing things. We're still a big nerd. Absolutely. We're still kind of, bring a book into school at lunchtime, but he wouldn't sit on his own anymore. He'd prefer to leave the book aside and sit with people and have a conversation. And given the fact that I grew up mostly surrounded by female presenting people in my household, I had no problem speaking to female presenting people outside of my household, because they're just people. Also, any young males kind of watching this, they're just people. All right. Be yourself. You don't have to be anything other than yourself. The people who will like you for who you are the people you should be around. If anyone demands that you change to fit their ideals, to fit their expectations, then they're not interested in you. They're only interested in what they can force things to be around themselves. So don't give them the time. Don't give the opportunity. Decide, choose in yourself who you want to be, what makes you smile, what makes you happy, what makes you kind of hold your head up high, and then fucking be it. There's billions of people all around the world, living their lives 24 hours a day at a time. Why should any of that kind of affect you and diminish you or demean you or control you or dictate to you? It's about balance and about being true to yourself at the end of the day, because that leads to a happier existence. So I was surrounded by people that I could happily talk to. That was always grand. And I was not involved in the game of pursuing romantic relationships. I was always open to it. I was interested in it, but I'm not going to go around and, pursue the game or anything like that at all, which is probably why I was non-threatening in those ways to female presenting people, which is why I had so many friends. And yes, romantic interests, they did happen. I am heterosexual, and that is something that I am. That doesn't have to define me. That doesn't have to define how I interact with people in any way. And so I've just always tried to treat people with respect, and treat people I find interesting as interesting, and treat people who don't show me respect as not someone I want to be worried about anyway, and leave them go about their own life and figure themselves out. So anyway, moving swiftly on from my teenage years, I made it into college. I made it into Blanchardstown IT, which was just being built actually at the time. Parts of the college were still prefab when I was going there, or not going there, because as I mentioned, as soon as I was 16 years of age, I could get a part-time job in Ireland. And so from then onwards, I was working outside of my schooling, and then bringing home and kind of handing up to support my family as best I could as well. So I didn't commit myself to my college further education as much as I could have. And when an opportunity came to go full-time in my part-time job at the time, which was a company called Games Workshop. So tabletop wargaming and strategy battle gaming, or hobby strategy battle gaming. It's something I got into myself as a form of creativity. And that's I went full-time working there in the retail store, but it was a hobby center as well. So it was these plastic kits, like the old school Airfix and stuff like that I was raised with as well. Assembling the model being like the hands-on craft, painting the model then being like the engaged kind of color, the creativity, the expression in that area. But then there was also a rule set where you could actually roll some dice and play a strategic war game against someone else. And that was another stage of growing for me, because I was then able to have social interactions over this game. And as someone who, played a good social person on TV in school, I was still very anxious, still very shy. I just played the front of the gregarious, funny person. But being able to kind of build friendships through that In fact, my best friend today is someone that, actually we started out as enemies. We both came into the hobby. I was working in the shop. He got a job in the shop after a time, and he was a full-timer. I was a part-timer, and we had a difference of opinion as to, the role of experience as opposed to, contracted time. But over the time, we became fast, firm friends. And it is about being able to have those spaces where you can converse and dialogue. So irrespective of the nerdy nature of the game, okay, actually, I'm going to point a definition, nerd. When I use the word nerd, I use it proudly and passionately, because to me, it is about a passion. Someone could be a nerd about anything. You could be a book nerd, a history nerd, a sports nerd, like a gamer nerd, a comic nerd, a movie nerd, like all of these different types. To me, nerd isn't a derogatory term. It's a term of expressing passion. And we are all passionate about something, and we all should be passionate about something. None of us should go through life not knowing what our passions are, not knowing about the thing that, we get excited about, and we just keep talking, and we keep that, that we just always kind of want to share. We always want to include people in, we always want to talk to people about our favorite music or about our favorite movies, or, our favorite pot plant or our favorite pet, or, any of these kind of things. That is our passion. And that to me is nerditry. So when I talk about being a big nerd, I'm talking about being big in my particular passions. But I have this multifaceted nerditry, some of which is now become Irish mythology. And, I've always been a reader. I got glasses when I was 7 years old because of eye strain. Mainly because I was reading books after dark when I shouldn't have been reading books. I was the kid who, told to go to sleep, go to bed now. I was like, yeah, okay, roll over, and then took the blanket off my head, opened the book where I left off, and take out a torch. So yeah, I did that. And then when I got glasses, eventually the optician was like, okay, well, no, he won't have to wear them all the time. He just has to wear them whenever he's reading or watching TV, which was pretty much all the time. So that's how I ended up wearing glasses. And I've been wearing glasses for decades now. But styles of glasses have changed. Many years ago, the glasses I wore were big, round. Dennis Taylor was a famous snooker player way back when, in the late 80s, early 90s. And that was the style of glasses I wore, which were far too big for my face. Thankfully, I've gotten style advice over the years and realized that, with a broad face like mine, these slimmer spectacles do it much better. So yeah, what else might you want to know about me? Oh yeah, how did I get into all of this? Well, that kind of comes down to my origin story with Laura, and that comes back to one of my siblings. My eldest sibling, in fact, Janice, was always pagan. I didn't understand it. I didn't know that there was different forms of spirituality. I was raised to be a Catholic. When I got to the age of being able to question and realizing that, actually, the representations of Catholicism, these individuals, they're not the best people in the world, so why should I be Catholic? I started referring to myself as Christian because I didn't know there was other paths to spirituality until later in life. But Janet did. Janet had found her path as a pagan a long time ago. And geez, where do I go from that? Yeah, essentially, after a toxic relationship, which led to an unhappy marriage with me, I was left alone, and I ended up reintegrating with my family after being alienated from them. So, very short sentence to describe it, because I'm not going to go into that. I kind of came back to my family, and I got a phone call one day from Janet, and she was like, I'm a little bit worried. I've been asked to do staff manager at this conference, this festival, this pagan festival in Ireland called Scealaí, and I'm just nervous to be stepping back into the pagan community that I haven't been engaging with for some time. And I was like, listen, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. You know exactly what to do. You're very intelligent, very talented. You're going to be great. And there's one thing you don't know that will just make it all easy. And, Janet was like, what? I was like, well, I just volunteer. So there's nothing that can't be solved as long as you put two Sullies behind it. And so, yeah, I made my sister laugh, and I volunteered to work at Scealaí. And that was the first time that I actually was present in the pagan community ever. But I was only present for a weekend at a time. Once a year, I would ghost in and kind of be a big Leo. Oh, by the way, yes, I'm born in August. I'm a Leo. Actually, someone did my astrological chart a long while ago, and I don't fully know all the specifics of it. It's not an area that I've studied, but I know that there's all of this circle of the different houses and lunar bodies and stellar bodies, planetary bodies, etc. And then where each kind of body was at the date you were born kind of dictates the influences of these kind of signs upon your on your demeanor. Again, I'm not an expert in it, but I know someone did the numbers for me before, and then they showed me it, and I'm like, I'm confused. What does all of this mean? I thought these things were supposed to be all over the place to then inform me about how they were. And they're like, yes, here's one that looks regular, and it was dots in Sagittarius, dots over there in Aries, some in Taurus, Mars over here in this house, etc. And they explained it to me, and I was like, okay, well, why are all of my dots in the one place? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, what place is that? And they're like, Leo. And I was like, oh, hold on. You're saying that all of the dots are in Leo. So all of my influencing celestial bodies are in Leo. And they're like, yes. And I was like, does that make me the Leoest Leo who ever Leoed? And they're like, John, why did I even tell you that? So essentially, I was turning up to this pagan festival, this annual kind of conference, where there was intelligent people of the Irish pagan community kind of talking and sharing their arts, and retailers like of spiritual items, pagan-centric items and support crafts. There was a lot being done, and it was being run by Laura O'Brien and Barbara, Laura's witch mammy. And so Barbara and Laura had been running it for a number of years. Barbara actually still does teaching in Wicca in Ireland. As far as I recall, I haven't checked in with Barbara in a while. I probably should do that. But yes, Barbara is absolutely brilliant. And so they, as a team, had been kind of running this for quite a while. And then suddenly I was integrated and I was there. And then given me being me, I was told that my involvement was no longer optional. And so that was me kind of stepping into the awareness. There is this other community of spiritual expression in my country. You don't have to just be Christian or Catholic. There is other ways to find a spiritual path. And that then opened my eyes again. That opened me to another journey that I could go on from that moment. And so I did begin to kind of I'd always been the kid who'd get lost in the woods. I was always the kid who would hug a tree. We'd be out walking as a family, and then John would disappear, and then they'd be like, where's John gone? And there's me over there hugging some tree. Funny story, when I was actually away with the Cubs many years in my past, we were playing a game of hide and seek in the woods, and we were all sent out into the woods. And I found a very welcoming tree, which I climbed up into and then settled down to hide. About an hour later, I woke up, having not been found during hide and seek. I climbed down the tree and arrived back into camp, and then got bawled out of it by the leaders, because they had done multiple search parties. I had been completely lost, and they were about to get to the point to ring my parents and tell me that they'd lost their child, and tell them they'd lost their child. So yeah, I'm that kid. Yes, but I have come a long way in my path, and I'm privileged to have come a long way. I'm now into my 4th decade, and when I look back at the stories of Ireland, like, that makes me an old one. Not many people in ancient Ireland lived beyond their 20s or 30s. Now, in where we are in the 20th century, we have extended our lifespan of the humans into like the 80s, the late 80s, pushing 90. And that's a huge amount of time. We haven't, thankfully, had any wars, or, well, actually, sorry, there's always war. Globally speaking, there's always some people engaged in some kind of toxic, aggressive fuckery. I have strong feelings about that, but there hasn't been global conflict since the 1940s. Now, I'm aware right now when I'm recording this, there is a lot of fear going on, because Russia has actually placed a whole lot of troops on the border of the Ukraine in Eastern Europe, and tensions are high. We're very worried about that. But I hold out hope for a diplomatic solution. and that we're not going to go into another form of genocidal, holocaustic fucking, actually no, I can't use the word Holocaust. That's niche to that specific harm and trauma that was done. So I apologize if yeah. Also, if I say something out of turn that does upset anyone or trigger someone, it's not my intent. I'm really, really sorry. It happened on one of my other videos, and I do apologize. I try to be aware of my language as I'm talking through, but sometimes I hit stream of consciousness and I don't actually give content warnings where I should. But thankfully, I have the privilege of being able to have lived for 4 decades now, and I look forward to another 4 decades. And so it's kind of understanding where my path has come in the past and how that is informing me into the future. You know, I was always the kid who hugged trees. I was always had this reverence for nature. When Carmel, my mom, was out planting in the garden, absolutely. Even as a kid, I'd be like, I'll get the shovel. Mainly because I could dig holes in the earth, and she'd be like, no, you have to fill it in and plant something in it. It's like, I don't mind as long as I get to dig. You know, so I've always had that connection with the environment. I'm very grateful and privileged to live in Ireland, which is a very green country because it's so wet. It's the Emerald Isle because it's green. It's green because it rains. There you go. We get a lot of rain here, but it's also very beautiful, and I'm very fortunate to be here in that. And so it's been easier for me to connect with nature because essentially in my island, drive 20 minutes from any kind of town, 30 minutes from any kind of city, and you're in nature. You're amongst fields, you're near trees, you know, you can find it. It's not that hard to go away from the larger kind of areas and the noisier kind of stuff. So I'm very grateful for that too. I'm very honored and very privileged by the fortune of my birth. So what else might you want to know about me? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else you might want to know about me, but all I know is that all of the stuff that has led me to here is only going to lead me further. And by constantly being in a space of exploration and query, like I love questions. I absolutely love a good question because it allows me the opportunity to challenge my perceptions, to kind of like engage my inquisitiveness, my curiosity, go find answers, go find more questions. So if you have any questions that you think I might be able to answer for you, from now understanding me a little bit better, or hopefully understanding my courses, my classes, any of the teaching I do at the Irish Pagan School, or in the Live at 5 community, or anywhere where you can interact and find me. I'm Dagda Bard on Instagram, Scealaí Beag in Facebook. But yeah, those are the things that we do for the Irish Pagan School for our kind of teaching programs and going forward. But yeah, it's important to not presume that we know people when we meet them in a certain circumstance. And that's one thing we've come across in our communities. Just because you may interact with me within the Irish Pagan School, I might be acting like a moderator in the groups. I might be acting like an administrator, or I might be acting like a facilitator in the classes. That doesn't, or a teacher in the classes. That doesn't mean you know the full extent of me. But now, because of this video, you might know something more. You might know something that you didn't even want to know, or you might have a better understanding of where I come from and how I go forward from here. So that's that. I've talked about me a lot. I generally don't do that. I find talking about me very, very uncomfortable, but I figured that it was important to kind of maybe take a bit of time to kind of share a little bit about me with you. So as ever, if you haven't liked it, please hit the button, do the like thing. If you feel that you want more of this content from myself and Laura at the Irish Pagan School, hit the subscribe. If you don't want to miss out on it, if you want to know straight away as soon as a new video, hit the bell for notifications. And, you know, if you want to know something about me, put it in a comment, ask me a question. I'll see if I can get back to you on it, either in another video or I might just reply to you below. So as ever, thank you very, very much for being here. Gurav Mila Mahagat. Remember, as much as I'm a unique specimen of humanity, so are you. Be the best version of you can be, because why should anyone tell you who you are? You get to choose. So many things inform your reality. So many things, you know, have been built up around where you grew up, the way you built up, the language you speak, the culture you grew up, the financial circumstances of your upbringing. It informs who you are, but you still get to choose. You still get the choice. So choose who you want to be, and just choose to be the best version of you, whatever that looks like. And love yourself. Take care. Until next time, Slán. Goodbye.